Dazzler to me is such an underrated hero. Her powers allow her to transmute sound into light, which on paper sounds pretty lame, until you realize just all the things she can use light to do, like make light lasers. Although Dazzler, aka Alison Blair, prefers to use her powers to jazz up her concerts and musical performances with stunning light shows, it's never really been explained if the sound is then muted thanks to her doing this or not. I'm assuming not though, because otherwise that would be a not very good musical performance. Dazzler has also been called on to play the role of hero multiple times. Daz proved herself to be so powerful throughout her own series, accomplishing things like facing the Hulk and not only surviving but pretty much beating him, and even being considered powerful enough to become a temporary herald of Galactus. In fact, Galactus wanted to keep her, but Dazzler was the one that made it temporary. She was like, get me out of here. I got a show to do. I gotta be singing. I feel like Black Knight is one of those characters who perfectly fits on the Excalibur team because of his connection to England, obviously, but in his respect, more of a medieval England, where his ancestor, Percy, was once the Black Knight. So he's really connected to, like, I don't know, just when you think of the most England, which I think is medieval England in my mind. That's just me though. In fact, Dane Whitman, later known as the Black Knight, is descended from a line of those who were cursed to wield the ebony blade. He inherited the blade himself from his uncle Nathan, but unlike his uncle, would choose to use it to be a hero as opposed to a villain. On my X-Force list, I talked about Pete Wisdom. At one point, he led the X-Force, but he's also been on the Excalibur team as well, fun fact. Honestly, for a character who has been connected to so many fascinating X teams, it's a wonder we don't talk about him more. At one point, he was also romantically linked to Kitty Pryde, fun fact. Pete's mutant power is that he can take in radiation and use it to emit energy-based knife-like weapons from his fingertips. The knives are said to be as hot as the sun, which is pretty hot. So while his power set isn't anything crazy sounding on paper, I mean it's just hot knives, the fact that they are just that hot makes him pretty powerful. I don't think he's someone you'd want to underestimate. Not only that, but he's also a gifted and experienced spy as well. Cerise is an older character who only served with the team for a short time. Her time was quite important for one of the other core members of Excalibur that many people know, Nightcrawler. The two were a bit of an item for a while. Cerise is of the Shi'ar, and as such she is super strong, durable, can fly, and also seems to exhibit powers related to the Kin Crimson tech, known as Hard Skin, allowing her the ability to make energy constructs. At least that is what it would seem is happening here, since of course the Kin Crimson were established later on. Cerise initially ran into Excalibur, who thought she was an invader, and initially fought against her before realizing that there had just been a misunderstanding here and that Cerise did not mean them any harm. After telling her story, although omitting some parts, she was given the opportunity to join up with the superhero team. Nightcrawler has all sorts of demonic ties. Firstly, he is the son of Azazel, as well as a son now of Destiny and Mystique. Azazel was used by Mystique basically so she could have a biological child with her wife, Destiny. Destiny and Mystique, however, would have to give up baby Nightcrawler, and as a result would have their memories altered to forget what they had to do. Destiny choosing to entirely forget that Nightcrawler was even her son, with Mystique choosing to retain that memory and knowledge at least. It was like, I'll forget the part where I had to give the baby up, but the other part I'm down to keep. Nightcrawler would go on to be taken in by a Romani sorceress, Margali Zardos. His teleportation powers link him to the Brimstone dimension, pretty much like through Azazel, which he uses stepping stones to transport himself wherever he so chooses with his teleportation powers. The Brimstone dimension basically acts as a through point for Kurt, leaving a puff of smoke behind every time he uses it that smells of burnt brimstone. Bam! Bei the Blood Moon was the betrothed of Douglas Ramsey, aka mutant X-Men Cypher. She was first introduced in the Ten of Swords event, where we met her as a mutant champion of Morocco. Hers and Doug's battle was less of a battle and was more of a wedding. Bei's mutant power is interesting as it prevents her from conventional forms of communication, like speaking. It is known as the Doom Note and is activated whenever she speaks. Combining psionic powers and acoustic-kinetic powers, the Doom Note is a destructive blast that resonates from her chest and is powerful enough to level mountains. The X-Men team from Earth 811 didn't do too hot and ultimately ended up trapped in a post-apocalyptic situation where the world was ending and Sentinels were killing, well, just about everything. Although they ultimately failed in their attempt to travel to the past and fix the past to save the future, with Rachel Summers transporting Kitty Pryde back in time to the body of her younger self, Kitty still found a way to save the day when she returned as Widget, and with help from an alternate Excalibur team and alternate Rachel Summers, deprogrammed the Sentinels, turning them into Protectrons who would basically work to defend the mutants instead of destroying them. Widget can teleport to alternate dimensions and is sort of like a version of Kitty in her ultimate form. Widget is basically Kate's consciousness, which lives inside a small metal ball that looks like a robot head. This means that Widget can live for a really long time. Widget actually gets her name from a younger version of herself, fun fact. Amanda Sefton is the foster sister of Nightcrawler and also, his ex. Yeah, that's just a thing in the comics. But I digress. She joined the Excalibur team through her brother Kurt, who sought out her help to help the team recover Captain Britain, who was lost in the time stream. After this adventure, she would end up joining the team for a time as an official member, but would mysteriously leave later on. This version of her that left was not actually Amanda, but was actually her mother, Margali, as Amanda had actually been kidnapped by Belasco and was being held prisoner. Amanda is known for being a powerful sorceress in the comics. Brian Braddock is a character a lot of people think of when it comes to Excalibur, but in terms of the Braddock siblings and family, I would say that he is one of the least thought of characters in terms of, powers and power sets, which is why I wanted to highlight him here. Also, what would an Excalibur list be without Captain Britain? I mean, we have to have some form of Captain Britain on here. Although currently in the comics, Betsy is actually Captain Britain and Brian is instead Captain Avalon. Some folks might think this is actually a downgrade for Brian, but I personally don't see it that way. I think making Betsy Captain Britain is an interesting evolution for her and her character, and gives her some more oomph and some more agency after years of her being blended with Quanon and kind of losing some of that in terms of that confusing and actually quite disturbing, especially in Quanon's case, union, if you will. Instead of having the Amulet of Right as Captain Britain, as Captain Avalon, Brian instead is armed with the Sword of Might. Initially, this sword corrupted him, but I do believe if anyone could rise above the corruption and the failure associated with the Sword of Might, it would be Brian. When people think powerful, they don't usually think of fairies. And yet, Meggan, the wife of Brian Braddock and a hero in her own right, who has also been a member of Excalibur, is just that. There is much she can do, but just even in terms of how much she can bench press, Meggan is impressive. She can lift 2 tons to start and can use energy to augment her powers to what is believed to be a limitless amount, meaning that she can be insanely strong when she wants to be, and as long as she has enough energy to basically bolster her strength. Not only is she physically durable, but she's also believed to be magically durable as well, and she is an empath who can also shapeshift. Not only can she shapeshift, but if she takes the form of someone considered to be superhuman, she can also gain their powers as well, so long as, once again, she has some energy to fuel that. That's about it. I'm your host Amanda McKnight. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube. Bye!